Video games. You win some, you lose some. One of the many facets of this hobby which distinguishes it from others is straight up time investment. We're expected to sink a lot of money into it, so we expect to be able to sink a proportionate amount of time. And time, or the times rather, are ever changing. We remember the good old times, being too young to read and write but old enough to push Mario to the left and right. We remember the teenage years, the world open to us, we had our first pocket change and all the magazines and online reviews in the world to read and help us figure out what to save it towards. Maybe we remember the college days, being swamped with schoolwork, internships, whatever, and having one or two comfort games to fall back on when time allowed. And today, for myself and a good few others, the time we're in is that of partnership and the verge of grown-uphood. Games are something we spend a lot of time doing. Except now for a lot of us, we're always spending our time with someone else, someone we love, someone we've recently begun to live with. For some, this might mean gaming less, and that's fine, whatever works for you in your relationship. For me and my relationship, our situation dictates that I'm typically never home alone. I can't make time when she's gone to partake in this hobby that might not be of interest to her. So whether she likes it or not, given all my free time is spent in her company, then all of my gaming so too is done with her in the room. And so all the time I spend playing is all the time she's been exposed to something new. This has led to some interesting moments. I mean, I've had the chance to observe someone I care about a lot and live with experience a new form of art for the first time. And I'm not alone in this. In the past few years, entire channels and a few YouTube series have cropped up inspired by the same sort of living situation. Girlfriend Reviews makes light of it through comedic pieces from the perspective of the titular girlfriend as it would be in the relationship with a gamer. And video essayist Rasputin has explored the concepts of gaming literacy, vocabulary, and learning through his Gaming for a Non-Gamer series, the non-gamer being his wife. Gaming isn't something that's easy to hide or mask. It's kind of made to throw out in the open, occupy a large space in the living room. And so it's interesting to see all these experiences from newcomers, that in my own relationship included. I've wanted to cover this topic a lot ever since my girlfriend and I had moved in together and I noticed her taking an interest in games. Originally I wanted to focus on the idea of player versus spectator and how a game could come across completely differently depending on where you're sitting. But I realized there's a lot more to talk about. So today's video is more of a discussion. I mean, it literally is a discussion. My girlfriend and I sat down and talked about gaming, her initial introduction to it, and the process by which I've slowly eased her into the point that today she's decently skilled at a few titles. We've separated the video into a few sections that reflect that easing chronologically. Those are games I've played which she's watched, games I've played which she couldn't give less of a fuck about, games we've played together, and games she's played on her own. A note, just for your quality of life, the visuals in this video won't be too important, so if you'd rather just listen to it in the background, that's fine. You wouldn't miss too much. If you do decide to watch, though, the accompanying footage when it's split-screen stuff is actual gameplay we went back and captured together. In order for things to be clear, I'll always be player 1 and she'll be player 2, so my screen will favor the top left while hers will favor the bottom right. In instances where it's single-player footage, however, that's just me playing. So without further ado, the discussion. Please enjoy. Yeah, so as with the whole structure of the video, we have those 4 different parts, but to start, I thought the best idea was to go over the fact that, like, gaming was not necessarily something that was, like, completely alien to you. You did grow up playing games to a certain extent.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we had a couple consoles at home, and I had played some games, but I'd never played the kind of games that I guess you were familiar with as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I played some Mario Kart and some stuff like that, but...
You play a lot of N64 games. I know you were really into Paper Mario, and
yeah.
we played it together at one point, so...
Yeah, no, Paper Mario was a big thing. You know, like Mario Party, I played some Ocarina of Time. I used to have a DS, so I used to play stuff on the DS too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, so I had played a couple games. It was more, I don't know, like the new controller stuff that, like, I was more alien to, like the...
And we're going to be talking about that a lot more later.
Yeah. You know, and obviously I knew about, you know, all the videos that you were making. I would always watch them and stuff. So I had the knowledge that, you know, you were giving me through the videos that you were making. But that was still a little bit secondhand, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think more recently, you know, ever since we moved in together, we've been watching other people's videos together as well. So that's fun. So I get, like, other perspectives on that. And there's, like, creators that I know through you. And so that's fun.
Maybe that's a good point to actually bring up. So how long have we been together? Excuse me?
It's 7.5 years.
I think so.
Something like that.
At least we both don't know.
Yeah. 7.5. I want to say 7.5.
And how long have we lived together?
About 3 years.
Longer than that. 4 years, no?
No, we moved out in 2017, in October of 2017.
Okay, well, look at that.
Wow.
Fuck.
So yeah, about 3 and something years.
So basically, all the time that we had our relationship before that, I mean, I was someone who grew up with modern games, and you were someone who kind of, you played with games when they were still kind of like toys and less like electronics.
Yeah,
you know what
absolutely.
I'm saying? But for the past 3 years, I mean, like, gaming is something you have seen, like, you know, I know you have a Wii at your house, or you had a Wii at your house when you had an N64 and a PlayStation 1 from when you were a kid, but like, this is the first time that you've been immersed in like all these like modern consoles and these like sleek black plastic and this fucking bullshit. So like, this is the point at which like it's really been something that's, you know, kind of been in the same room as you a lot of the time. I have no idea where the fuck I'm going with this.
No, but I get what you're saying. Like, it's when I was a kid, it was more like, it was a toy. You're right. Like,
because every kid played games.
Yeah, it was like, hey, like, let's play as a Mario or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I get that experience where it's like, it's the new consoles and the new everything.
Controllers were like colorful back then and see-through and translucent and funny plastic, and now it's like it's like a home electronic that you stick on your TV and it looks like sexy and like you're fucking playing Metal Gear Solid on it, whatever the fuck, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure.
And this is a great segue into basically one of the biggest issues that we've seen, I think, that we both talked about, that is one of the biggest kind of hurdles for you to kind of overcome when it comes to getting into modern gaming, which is like the modern video game vocabulary and literacy. Some of that is things to do with controls, like just things like dual stick, 3D camera controls. There's things like prompts that sometimes it takes you a while. Like, a lot of it has to do with familiarity with the controller, but I mean, there are also like behavioral things that modern games have kind of like ingrained in me that you don't necessarily do all the time.
Yeah, for sure. I think we talk about this a lot, but I don't think I have the same intuition that you have when it comes to games. I think, you know, for example, I mean, we'll talk about this when we talk about Resident Evil, but you know, we used to enter a room together and you would go to all 4 corners and scout out and break boxes and find all the items, where I would just go to the next objective. I would follow the marker.
I think, I don't remember which, I think it was my God of War video, but I had brought this up one time. It's like, you kind of, having played so many games of the generation that I did, like, you get to a point where when the camera faces a certain way, you have to realize the camera's not facing that way for no reason. Someone pointed that way because where it's not pointing, there's probably like a hidden treasure for you to collect, and like you'll get rewarded if you pay attention.
Yeah.
So there's definitely stuff like that. But I mean, a big thing is just the controller itself. For someone who's never picked up a dual shock looking controller, knowing what Rs 1 through 3 are is a challenge, and it can't be done in the heat of a moment. So a lot of the times the game will tell you, like, press this button, and you're stuck looking at this controller because that's not really something you're used to. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, you know, like we were saying for QuickTime events and stuff, if I get to a QuickTime event and says press R1 or something, I have to look at the controller. It's not something that I know.
Or it'll be like those I think Resident Evil does it a lot, where like it's telling you to press one button and then suddenly it switches buttons, and like you don't always like notice that the button has switched.
Yeah.
I know we said this a little bit too, where like when I'm in a game and I want to jump, like when I'm playing Zelda or something, or when I'm playing like Dark Souls and I want to sprint or something, like I know how to sprint, but I don't, like, off the top of my head, I can't tell you what fucking button that is right now. Like, I don't know. Like, if I was looking at a controller, I'd be like, I don't know. But when I'm in it, like, I have this innate familiarity with it, where I'm not really thinking about the buttons I'm pressing, I'm thinking about what I'm trying to accomplish in the game, and I'm able to do that. It's kind of like what I compare to a lot is like punching in your security code on your alarm system. Like, I don't remember my mother's like the alarm code at my mom's house, but I know that if I walk in and I hear the alarm blaring, I can just I can pull that off. Like, I can do that.
Well, yeah, it's muscle memory, right?
Yeah, exactly. But that's just something. It's something that you don't have because this isn't the sort of controller you've held for a lot of your life. So it takes some time to get used to.
Yeah.
And I guess it's on the games to kind of expect some inexperienced players to get into it and give you kind of safeguards for it.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, it's about game literacy, and that's still something I'm developing, I think.
Yeah, and one of the ways that you've kind of developed a little bit of a gaming literacy is in the games that you've watched me play. So when we first moved in, at first I didn't bring over all of my modern consoles. When we moved to our second apartment, that's when I brought the big guns out. And I think the first game that you watched me play, start to finish, like the first big AAA game that I got was God of War, the new one with the axe and all that shit. And I so on the topic of just games that you watched me play rather than you having played yourself, I think that was like probably like it was the first and also one of the most interesting because it was a game that I fucking hated. I despised that fucking game. It was so boring, but you found things that you liked about it.
I loved watching you play that game. I love the lore. I love the way it looked. Like the whole, is graphics the right word? I don't want to sound like an idiot.
Can I keep this in? I always say visuals when it's more to do with like visual effects and not necessarily like the polygons.
Yeah.
I just visuals is kind of like the umbrella term.
Yeah. So the visuals were really, really appealing. It was really pretty. It was a really, really pretty game to watch.
It was, but like it was just. And you know what? I wish now that you're a little bit more familiar, I wish like I could show it, I could make you play it, and you can see how fucking dull it is, and how overdrawn it is, and how like I thought that game ended 3 times before it ended, and I was like, more.
But like you were saying, it is interesting because it is the first AAA game that I had seen somebody else play from start to finish, and I was really invested in it, and it really like turned me on to like what am I trying to say? Like the games are like a really like they're not just toys.
Like the games have become like a modern. Can I keep this in? This is great banter. But like the games are like a more evolved form of entertainment than you thought they were.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So it's like it's a long way from like Mario Party. It's really like it's a story and it's a form of entertainment and it's really a piece of art.
Well, a lot of that comes from, I mean, this is a little bit of industry insider bullshit, but like when I worked at my 2 jobs ago in the entertainment industry, basically like what I learned was that games have kind of become a lot more like VFX. They've kind of modeled themselves on VFX and more traditional entertainment, so that's kind of why you get games like that coming out.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, it is really interesting because that's a big reason why I really enjoyed watching you play God of War, but on the other side, I mean, you hated it. So.
Yeah, because like the gameplay for me was like it was like stuck in the past. I think it was on the Writing on Gamescast. They called it the most 2012 ass video game of 2018 or whatever the fuck year it came out.
Yeah.
So to me, I was like I was playing a game that was like stuck in the past, but the visual language was something of an era of entertainment that was something that like you're more familiar with. So it was really like something interesting for you to watch.
Yeah.
The second big AAA game, which I think we played right after God of War, or I played right after God of War, which you sat literally on the floor to watch me complete.
We didn't have a couch.
No couch. But that was Resident Evil 7, which I think in that case was a lot easier for you to see the gripes I was having with it because I infamously fucking shit on that game. And yeah, that was I remember you enjoying it quite a bit for again the visuals but that one was, I mean, the story wasn't really it wasn't as engaging as God of War, so I could see like you being a little bit more convincible to like to basically like tell like, hey look, this is bullshit, and you'd be like, yeah, okay, that is kind of bullshit.
Yeah, but I mean, it was also easier for me to see the problems you were having with it. I think it was more obvious when you were replaying the same boss 47 times.
Fuck. Yeah.
Because like there was some stupid little thing at the end, like that was more obvious for me to see.
And as a spectator, that's like not interesting to you, which we'll talk more about when we talk about Dark Souls. But yeah, no, I totally got that. But even like people have joked like that every Resident Evil, and now that you've played all the Resident Evils, everyone ends with like a tanker section. Seeing how like even the 7th one, which like has a whole different setting in like the wherever the fuck it is in the swamps and marshes and like these little houses, it also ends with a tanker is like so fucking disappointing. And you start with like these cool environments and you get to like gray hallways, pipes, like hatch doors.
Wasn't that your favorite part of the game though?
That was my favorite part because it was the only part with like a cool puzzle. That was the fucking... That's what sucked. I wish they did that in the house. Oh, fuck. I don't want to talk about that game anymore. And then, so I mean, we must have played some other games after that, but then the Resident Evil 2 remake came out. At some point, we played 2 together, and you enjoyed that too. Again, the visuals were really cool, but it was also like, you weren't necessarily able to follow the navigation, because that's the big point in that game is like that you're building this mental map and you're trying to like find all the best routes. But I remember that eventually, because the audio was so good, we got like that headphone splitter.
Yeah.
And we were able to share that audio experience. And I remember like that really engaging you and you realizing like, because I mean, I guess like as someone who, I mean, you've consumed a lot of media, but like something like dynamic audio is something that no other medium of entertainment can do, right? So I guess that must have been, was that the first time you ever experienced something like 3D sound, like based off like your character's position, shit like that?
Yeah, I think so. You know, like honestly, I think like the hearing like Mr. X's footsteps around you like was like the first time I was actually like shitting my pants, and I wasn't even playing.
Like
you
any
know?
game ever?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. It was just really, really scary.
Yeah, and then otherwise I had taken down that, so I mean it's not like a big story game, and I mean, it is AAA, but I do play a lot of Splatoon.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite fucking games. And you have watched me play a lot of Splatoon. And I mean I've made whole videos about this, but one of the things I like about Splatoon is that, and this kind of touches base with like the game literacy stuff we were talking about, where Splatoon is a game that breaks so many norms of the kind of game that it's trying to be, that even if you don't like, you're not literate in all of those things that games typically are, it's okay, because Splatoon isn't those things, and you can pick up on what it's trying to do. It's super readable. It's all like, you can see the colors on the ground, and even if you don't understand what the hell's going on, you can tell like, oh, you are this color and you're fighting this color. You know, it's like super easy to read.
Yeah, I mean, I like watching you play Splatoon. It's essentially, you know, it's easy to follow. There are these 3-minute matches, and it's essentially a game of tug of war or capture the flag or something. So it's something I'm already super familiar with, and it's really easy to get invested in those matches.
I think it's the only game I know that you don't play that you have favorite modes in.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
Like you'll be like, oh, I don't like watching you play Clan Blitz, but I like watching you play Tower Defense or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
What's your favorite one? The
Rainmaker.
Rainmaker's
my favorite. That one's so cool.
Rainmaker is definitely like a good. It's like a spectator sport. It's really easy to like watch, and you know they have the UI is like super easy to read. It's super easy to understand what the fuck is going on without having to actually get hands on.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting though is that you had actually like put the controller in my hands one time, and I hated it. I hate playing that game. Like it's so stressful. Maybe with the new, you know, skills and knowledge that I have, maybe I could try it again and maybe it'll be different. But at that moment in time, I loved watching you play it, but I couldn't stand playing it. I thought it was too much to handle.
So speaking of games that I play that you don't play, there are some that you've watched and you've been interested in, and it's kind of opened your eyes to certain things, and there's some that have, you know, you've closed your eyes to because you don't give a shit. So basically, I think what we found out, especially when I played Dark Souls and Bloodborne, was that you got very tired of like the repetitive nature of it. And you know what, part of that's my fault. I think when you first started watching me play, I wasn't very good at those games, so a lot of the time was spent like at a bonfire, progressing a little bit, dying, starting back at the bonfire, going a little bit further, dying. So I feel like the reset difficulty of that sort of game isn't really conductive to backseat gaming. There's nothing really for you to pick up. Like, you're watching me do the same shit over and over again. You're watching me like not be good enough and like restart over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if I'm not the one playing the game, it's not interesting to me because I'm not actually invested in, you know, the game and where I'm going and what I'm doing. So, you know, and not so much Dark Souls, more Bloodborne, but like to me, all the areas look the same. All the areas are like dark and gloomy, and there's these, you know, it's just it's hard. There's less variety, and I don't know. I wasn't invested. I just ended up on my phone, like.
You're just doing your own shit.
Oh man.
But see, so like what everybody talks about with like those sorts of games, the Souls fucking games, is that like the big thing is like the feeling of like fucking up and like getting your ass pounded by like some boss over and over and over again, and then finally accomplishing it and like feeling really good, and that feeling is something you can't do unless your hands are on the controller. Like,
it doesn't translate.
Yeah, like if you're just watching it, it just looks like the most boring, it looks like a fucking a skipping fucking record. Like I totally get that. It just sucks because like those are really interesting games, in my opinion.
No, I mean I'm sure they are, and they look like they would be super interesting. But like, what were those two guys, Ornstein and Smaug or whatever? You played them for like you played them for like 4 days. I wanted to kill myself. Like. It was so boring.
I think we do. So we do have to give the games a little bit of credit because while they're not really interesting for you to watch, we have, as you've developed as a gamer. I'm so sorry I've done this too, but as you have developed as a gamer, they are games that like we come back to in conversation a lot.
Yeah.
You're really interested in the history of it and like the design and like the whole. I mean, it's the first time, and it came a lot when we played Death Stranding, but we talked a lot about how like asymmetrical or asynchronous multiplayer systems like that work and how players at different points of time are doing different things and you see shadows of each other and how you can influence each other's games. And I think the first time I like got an extra Estus flask when someone else, whatever the fuck they did to the shrine to turn it into whatever the fuck, like, and then I explained to you how that worked, you were like, oh wow, that's really fucking cool. Because like that's not, I guess, again, like coming from an era of gaming, because you were familiar with games, but you were familiar with games before online connectivity and shit like that, so this wasn't really like something you were ever aware of.
Yeah, like the messages on the ground and stuff like that I find super interesting. And now, especially lately, like now when you're playing, I'll tell you like, go what's that, like go see that.
Yeah, you want to like see
I wanna
what
read.
all the other people are doing.
Yeah. But I mean that's cool, that's interesting, but in terms of the gameplay itself, I have no idea what you're up to right now.
Completely fine. What I do find interesting, just the last thing about Dark Souls, is that separately to myself, D&D is something you've gotten into, mostly by watching like podcasts and stuff like that. And that's not something I have no experience with this. You know, everything that the two of us know about D&D is what you know about D&D. But like as I've because I'm now like on my third playthrough of Dark Souls, maybe I'll finally beat it this time. I think what's cool is that even though it's not something that you're really interested in watching, like you'll sometimes like pick out something that you notice on screen and you'll be like, what is that? Like how does that work? Like what is this mechanic? So I feel like just playing more games and playing things like D&D, you're more aware of like mechanical systems in games and you're interested in those sorts of things.
No, I agree. I think especially in Dark Souls now, when you pull up the menu and you're buying stuff and you're comparing stuff and you're comparing stats and stuff like that, there's a lot of similarities there between that and like a tabletop game. So it's something that it's easier for me to read now, I think.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know, did we talk about Death Stranding anywhere? Let me just...
I don't think we wrote it down, no.
We didn't write fucking Death Stranding. Do you wanna talk about... So, I mean, yeah, no, we do. I have it nowhere in these notes. Well, okay, so, I mean, this was... Maybe let's backtrack a little bit, but this was a game that you did watch me, well, at certain points.
Yeah, fair enough.
Death Stranding was a big AAA game. I mean, it was something that even like before we moved in, like you were aware of like my whole weird Metal Gear Solid obsession and all that shit. So you kind of like knew the character, the auteur, the fucking like the whole culture surrounding this game and the hype surrounding it and everything that had happened. So that was cool to like get like there was a lot of like tension leading up to that game and it was cool to like get it all relieved and like have that closure on it. And it was cool that you were able to be with me for that and like see what it finally ended up being. It was, I mean, you enjoyed certain aspects of it, right? Probably different, again, aspects than me.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wasn't the one that was calculating, how far I had to go for certain things and like, optimizing my route and stuff like that. Like that was all you. Like I had nothing to do with that. But yeah, as far as like the goofy story, then like trying to figure out what the heck was going on and like the characters and that to me was interesting. But I think, those parts could have just as well like been a movie for me. Like as far as the gameplay goes, I don't know if I was super invested. It
feels like the sort of, at least like the way it's like it's a game that I played that you watched me play. It feels like the opposite experience of what we had with God of War. Well, no, actually, no, not the opposite. Sorry, the opposite for me. Basically, what I'm saying is that
you also like this game.
It's also a game that I liked, but in a different way. It's not like we were playing through some story and there was some story fluff and then there was like a bunch of shitty mechanics I didn't give a fuck about.
Yeah.
No, in a way, it's the opposite. What I'm trying to say is that there was a bunch of like mechanical fluff that you did not give a shit about and it like became my life. Like I was like trying like to me that game, I don't care about the baby, I don't care about Mads Mikkelsen, I don't care about any of these stupid fuckers. All I want to do is see who wants what delivered and how do I optimize my route, what bridges do I have to build, what streets do I have to build, what car do I need, what motorcycle, how much weight do I need, can I build a fucking zip line. Like I was so invested in like the systems and like optimizing and that was stuff that you didn't give a fuck about. So it was cool because it was a game I could still play on my own and just like do some deliveries and then you could pop in and then I would do like a story missions. It was a more shareable game, but there were definitely aspects that like again you miss if you're not really playing it yourself.
Yeah, and like it's not something that translates.
Yeah, so and I don't blame you at all for like not finding that entertaining because like I totally get like if it's not in your head, like you won't think that like carrying these stupid boxes is fun at all.
Well, I think that an important point is that this is a game where the story kind of has nothing to do with the gameplay, in the sense that, like, the gameplay is you're delivering boxes and you're doing this and that.
Well, it's the themes of connecting the world.
No, I get it, but you know what I mean? Like,
He's a Brit. What's his fucking name at the end? What's that stupid joke? Like, cliff. He's a cliff, and he's the bridge off it. Because without the bridge, a cliff is just.
That's so stupid. But what I'm trying to say is that, you know, like, the gameplay, to me at least, felt really independent from the story.
Yeah,
whereas something like, I don't know, you know, Resident Evil, the gameplay is the story. You know, you are progressing throughout the rooms, and it's easier to keep track of the story through the gameplay. Mm-hmm. You know? So I think that's probably one of the reasons why I didn't really give a shit about you delivering boxes.
That's okay, that's fine. So at some point in our relationship, we did begin to play games together.
Yeah, at some point.
What a mistake. So, the first game, I believe, I can't find a source for this, a source being, I guess, a receipt in this case, because it has to do with me. Why am I saying this? The first new game that I bought when we had moved out, I believe, was ARMS.
I believe so too.
And that was because when we first moved out, the only console I brought with me was... Actually, no, I'm lying. I was about to say the Switch. Well, now I've lied because I corrected myself. I jumped the gun there. I was like correcting myself in my head before I said it.
It was the Switch. You brought the Switch.
Yes, but I was about to say that, but I also brought the Wii U.
Okay.
Because I made the Pikmin videos when we were together, remember?
Yeah, but we mostly just played the Switch.
We mostly just played the Switch. But anyways, ARMS had come out, and I was debating whether or not to get it, and one day I picked it up on my way home from work, and I was like, fuck it, I'm going to try out this game. Mm-hmm. So ARMS was like really the first new game that I got for myself while we were sharing a living space. And we were sharing a very small living space. We were sharing like a studio, like one room, a bed, a TV that could not fucking fit, that was like hanging off this fucking table, and like it looked like it was going to collapse any second.
It was the worst.
If I was going to be playing a new game, you were, whether or not you liked it, for better or for worse, also going to be experiencing it.
Oh yeah. I couldn't go anywhere. That's what was happening.
And I wonder if that's the reason why you were then like interested in playing it with me, because you got to see me start start it from the beginning, you know, and see the tutorials and kind of like pick up on all the stupid shit I was doing. And I mean, fundamentally, it is a really easy game. It's just rock, paper, scissors with jumping, I guess. And I mean, the characters have these specific things, but it is really familiar. Well, not familiar, sorry. Well, I guess familiar in that sense, but also like very, very simple.
Well, it's kind of like Splatoon in that way, right? It's easy to read.
Yeah, because it breaks like the norms of like, you know, fighting games and even just regular. Like if you've never played a fighting game before, you can still kind of read what the hell's going on in ARMS.
Yeah. No, I guess I got interested in ARMS because, like I said, it was easy to follow, and you know, you started playing it just as we had moved out, and I don't know, I got interested in you playing it, and I don't really remember how it happened, if it was that I wanted to try it, or if you convinced me to try it, or I don't know what. But we started playing some rounds together, and I got pretty okay.
You got pretty. You. This was the first game that you ever beat me at, like that you ever like got like to a win screen without me like letting you. Like this is the first time like I tried to fight you and could not succeed, and that was a really strange feeling. Like it's not something I was used to, you know. Yeah. The only person who'd ever beat me at a video game in the same room without like my consent was like my brother before that. Well, no, you know what I mean. Like my sister had beaten me in a game before, but that's because like she would cry if I won. Oh. So like I would like wait and like let her beat me and whatever.
I should have done that.
Fuck off. But like I did that with you. Like I've done that with you in a couple of games, but like that was the first time that I was like trying to fight you and you beat the shit out of me, and I was like, wow. Maybe it's because it was a game that you started with me at the same time as. Maybe it's because it's just a very simple game and it's easy to read. But
yeah. I mean, I probably got lucky too. Like, you know,
well, no, I mean, towards the end, like we used to tag team and we would like kick the AI's asses and we would like go through the mission levels and whatever the fuck.
Yeah, but then we'd go online and we'd get absolutely wrecked.
Well, sometimes we would kick people's asses. And you know what was really cool? It was like the perfect game to ease you into video games with, because again, like you said, like Splatoon, it's brand new. It's not like anything that's ever come out before. When you play online, you're on the same playing field kind of as everybody else who's playing it, because it's a brand new experience. And the online mode, you remember how the party mode worked? Mm-hmm. So it was like, fun. Yeah, so like you logged in and they had like all these different like modes and your little icons would float around and you'd get randomly paired. But the important thing was you weren't always doing the same fight. So it like wasn't boring. Mm-hmm. It wasn't repetitive. Sometimes you do 2-on-2 fights. Sometimes you do the volleyball stupid thing. Sometimes you do the basketball thing. Mm-hmm. and then sometimes you'd have those mini boss fights with the skull dude.
Yeah, like 3 against the boss.
And then sometimes there were one-on-one fights, and if you were playing with another person in the room, like you were doing a split-screen multiplayer session, sometimes you would get into a one-on-one and it would cycle who did it. So sometimes like we would do a match together, finish it, and then I would get dragged into a one-on-one. You would watch me, and then we'd go out, do a basketball thing, and then you would get dragged into a one-on-one. So there was a lot of like cool moments where we got to like really share the experience, and we both got to be backseat gamers to each other at certain points. I really like how they did that. It was like, I mean, I don't think they intended this, but it was like the perfect game for people who moved in with their non-gaming partners who were going to end up sitting down and probably playing this thing because the Switch comes with 2 controllers built in, you know?
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't ARMS, doesn't it have like the dual stick like camera controls where you have to like move with one and control a camera with another?
You told me to correct you if you're wrong.
Am I full of shit?
You're full of shit.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it just No, well, okay, and it has like, remember the camera locks onto like one enemy, but if you flick the stick, it'll lock onto the other enemy.
But how does the camera work? It
locks onto whatever enemy you're aiming at.
Okay, I guess I'm full of shit. That's weird. I like distinctly remember moving the camera.
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
All right.
Never.
That's fine.
You're completely wrong.
That's fine. I'm allowed.
It's okay. Well, no, they can do that because the game is also intended to be played with the motion controls, and if you do that, you lose the stick, right? So it can't be like that.
Yeah. I was gonna make a point about how I got good at camera controls, but I guess I'm full of shit.
Well, you did get good at camera controls, but that's with other. We'll talk about that later.
All right.
I mean, on the topic of fighting games, we played Smash a little bit when it came out.
Yeah. I got okay at Smash.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not very good, so like I was trying to teach you, but like I'm not good enough to like have that mean anything. So,
but you're better than me, so
yes.
You know there was something there.
There's a ceiling to like how good I can ever get at Smash, and I've reached it, and like that's it. And like you can like approach it, but like that doesn't really mean very much. So, but I mean, it's just like a fun game to like casually play around.
No, I had a good time. Yeah, no, it was a good game to play just casually, just like for a while when it came out.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just said.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Mario Kart is something that, I mean, we had both played on our own, like, different titles. I mean, I got into it on the DS. I think you played more on the N64 and on the Wii, and I played on the Wii also. Did you play on the Wii?
A little bit, but my bread and butter was the N64.
Okay. So, it was a series that, like, we both had played together.
Yeah. Well, separately. We both had played.
Yeah, sorry. We both had played together separately before we knew each other.
That makes sense.
And, it was, like, a little while ago, I guess. This is the problem is like going in this structure for the video of like things like I played on my own, things you watched me, things we played together. It kind of sucks because we're like jumping all over in the timeline. Yeah, I know. For Mario Kart, that was something we did a little bit more recently.
Yeah.
I don't remember why. I just like turned it on and I was like, fuck, I want to play Mario Kart. And then you are always eager to play Mario Kart if ever it's on, so you grabbed a controller and we started playing. This was after we had gone through all the Resident Evils, right? Yeah. So, I mean, you were more familiar with games and controls and all that shit. But, like, what was really cool to me was that you had played Mario Kart all your life and you didn't know how drifting worked.
I had no idea. And you just showed me this whole thing and it, like, changed my life.
Yeah, you were, you were kind of just, like, cruising along and then I was like, why aren't you drifting? Because to me, like, people who don't drift in Mario Kart freak me out because, like, that is, like, the one thing
but I didn't know.
in the game. Like, there's, like, the gas and, like, the fucking tracks are not super complicated. You never, like, need to do anything crazy. You never need to fucking hit the brakes. There's, like, the items, but they're like, they automate themselves. You just press a button. Like, literally the only thing to do other than, like, steer and press a button from time to time to shoot items in Mario Kart is drift. And it freaks me out that most people who, like, oh, when I play Mario Kart, they don't know drifting. It's like, what the fuck? What have you been playing?
Well, I think on the N64 at least, you could still do okay and not drift. You know, like, you could still get, like, you know, like, have, like, a competitive score or whatever. Maybe not get first place, but in the new version that we were playing, I would always get dead last.
Dead last. Like, if you don't drift, no matter what CC you're like, you're getting completely fucked. Yeah.
Yeah, but then we spent maybe, I don't know, a couple days where you coach me through it.
And it takes a while. And I mean, like, something I've talked to you too about, which, I mean, you haven't experienced because you've only played the one Mario Kart so far with drifting, is that, like, every Mario Kart kind of, like, changes the drifting physics, like, just enough so that, like, if you know it from the last game, you're just, like, you're either, like, overshooting or undershooting no matter what the fuck you're doing. But it was cool to, like, take you from, like, having never really drifted in any of the Mario Karts to, like, show you how to drift, and suddenly, like, you're not in, like, 12th place anymore. Now, like, we're getting there, and, like, you're in 3rd, you're in 2nd, you're in 1st.
I got a couple of firsts.
You got a couple of firsts. course.
Yeah.
And that was cool too, to just like see like how I mean, it wasn't Mario Kart games that you had played up to that point. You played Resident Evil with me. It was like these, like you were talking about, that intuition that you start to build about games, like how to just kind of to understand that you're in a system and you're trying to like beat the game or whatever the fuck. How just having that mentality will help you out when you're playing like any other game.
Yeah. Definitely, like I really saw a difference after having played the Resident Evil series with Mario Kart, and honestly with other games that we've dabbled in or messed with or whatever, or even games that I watch you play now. It's different. I have a much deeper understanding of.
You read them a lot better.
Yeah, I read them better. Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
You know what's crazy? Talking about living together in video games?
What?
This is off topic. Before we talk about Resident Evil, which is like the big thing, the big topic, you know what I want to talk about? This Roomba that I bought yesterday that's on its way. You know what's crazy?
What does it have to do with video games?
This doesn't have to do with video games, it has to do with moving out. Before I moved out, when I lived with my mother, God bless my mother, there were points where like, towards the end of my time before moving out, that like I did not enjoy anyone in my family's company except for like one of my sisters. I like hated everyone in my family. I don't know what the hell was up my butt, but like I hated everyone. And like having moved out, I've kind of like realized how much my mother did. Just the fact that like she got me food I liked is such a big fucking deal. Anyways, all this to say, everything changes perspective once you move out.
Yeah.
Life is like a coming of age story. But
What?
I mean, literally. Every day is like a coming of age story. What I'm trying to say is that I didn't used to really get excited for anything in this world other than video games before. And right now, there is not a single upcoming video game, except for maybe the new Zelda. We don't know anything about it. There's like not really a single video game I can name you right now that I am more excited about than this Roomba that we have coming. And it's not even a Roomba, it's like a knockoff brand. I'm so stoked for this fucking thing. Like in the same way that like I like watch like clips and like check out all these like when I was in high school, like read the forums and like get super hyped about games. I've been doing nothing but watching like vacuum reviews for
the one vacuum review guy on
That
YouTube.
guy is so cool. Okay, his name is Vacuum Wars on YouTube. Shout out to Vacuum Wars. He has this objective like fucking like obstacle course for these vacuums, and he like tests them, and he's really smart too. Like he'll put sand in a carpet and then weigh the dustbin after to like calculate how much like sand it got out of the carpet.
I trust this man.
I trust this guy. He has like real measures. He has like these like crazy devices that he uses to measure them. He has these tests that they do. He like videotapes them and like puts motion trackers on them to like make it's fun. Dude, this guy is bananas. I love this guy.
So how many Roombas have you watched him review before you made your decision?
Oh my god, so fucking many. I ended up getting one that he gave a low score to compared to some others, but price-wise it was good, and it was on sale.
There you go.
But he said the big thing is that it's not very powerful, but it is the quietest. And since we're in an apartment and, our landlord lives below us, I don't want to, like, piss anybody off.
Yeah.
So I figured this one's the best. And it has the brushes. And it's still a good brand. It's Shark.
That's fine.
They make something I know. I know the brand name. I don't know. I couldn't name you a single thing they make, but I know this name.
What's a brand you've heard?
What do they make? What the hell does Shark make?
Roombas.
No.
I don't know. I have no idea.
This is within 30 seconds of turning this machine on. He's already oh no, he got out! Alright, what's he gonna do? He's already trying to freaking kill me. Oh no. Oh, dunk. Oh, I love the way he bumps into shit. That's so great. Oh my god. Oh no, he's doing good. Okay, I dig this thing. I mean, it's random, but it's quiet. I think I made the right decision. Thank you, Vacuum Wars. Oh, is he gonna pick up this giant piece of dust? Gone. Alright, I'm digging this. Alright, see you later.
But getting excited about stuff like that, that's called, like, becoming an adult. I hate to tell you. That's just, you get excited about things. I'm so excited about this dishwasher that we have coming. So excited. So excited.
I'm less excited about that. I'm reliant on this dishwasher that's coming in. I don't know if you can call that excitement. Like, I need it to come.
I'm excited.
Like, if I were excited about this dishwasher coming, I'd have to admit that I'm excited about, like, the earth rotating around the sun every day. Because I literally need it. Not every day, every year. Every day. Flying.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've really seen you change, Like, we met when we were teenagers, and now you're excited about Roombas. This is crazy.
Mind you, I think even as a teenager, a Roomba is something I would get excited about.
Yeah,
it's a robot that, like, rolls around. It's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, because you're kind of a dweeb.
Shut the fuck up. You saw it. I'm so tired, dude. Okay.
Let's go. Let's continue.
So, the
Yes.
big topic of discussion.
Yes.
What is it?
Resident Evil.
Resident Evil. So, why is Resident Evil significant to our relationship?
Was it Resident Evil 6 came out like a week after we started dating?
Yes, and
Or before or after?
And I remember because when we had started dating, the only thing I cared about before I met you was Resident Evil 6, which was coming out. And then after we started dating, it came out and I had totally forgotten it, and I just like went to Walmart one day and picked it up.
That's sweet. I'll take it as a compliment.
If you look, actually, the copy we have still has like a Walmart coupon on it because I didn't like pre-order it or anything, so Walmart fucking put their dumbass sticker on it.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's like a nice symbol, you know, like that they kind of started the beginning of our relationship, and now I have either watched you play or actively played with you through all the Resident Evil games.
Like partly just by like chance, not even like on purpose.
It wasn't even like a thing we set out to do.
So I mean, Resident Evil was a big part of my stupid ass life for a long time. And it was also, I mean, part of this is also my sister's doing, right? Because there was that one Christmas that I got my sister a PS3.
Yeah.
And I just fucking put a shit ton of games on it, and we had played through a couple of them together, but then we moved out, and then I didn't spend like every day there. But one of the games I had downloaded onto it for her was Resident Evil 4. And a lot of the games she gravitated to were games that like either she remembered like me or my brother playing when we were younger.
Yeah.
So I mean, she played through Metal Gear Solid 1, and then she touched God of War a little bit, and then she touched Resident Evil 4, and she got really, really into it.
Yeah.
And then as like a returning the favor for getting the console for her and like just dropping off all those games on her, she had gotten me a copy of Resident Evil 7 when it came out, and I was holding on to this copy and I couldn't play it because I didn't bring my PS4.
Yeah.
So it kind of all started because like literally like one of the second game you watched me play once we moved in and I had my console and all that shit was Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
And I mean, Resident Evil was something you were familiar with, I mean, through the videos, right?
Yeah, no, I already knew it was a big thing in your life, you know, so I was already sort of familiar with it. But that was funny too, because then you played Resident Evil 7, which has nothing to do with anything else that I knew, you know, that you were attached to within the series. So I kind of didn't really know what the heck was going on. But watching you play the rest of the series and playing them with you kind of fleshed it out for me. Yeah, no, it started with 7, weirdly enough.
Yeah, and then it kind of moved on to the remake of Resi 2 came out, and you watched me play that, and we talked about that already. And then I don't remember what prompted it, but at one point I just kind of like decided I wanted to play 4, and I just started replaying 4, and you were there for that, and you watched me play that. And then after playing 4, there was that whole, on Switch they made a bunch of ports of the 4th, 5th, and the 6th, and those came out. Actually, you know what, even before that, I had played a little bit of the Resident Evil 1 remake.
Yeah, you had
But you didn't give a fuck about that.
No, but I mean, I watched it a little bit.
Mostly because, and you know what, we forgot to bring it up in the section about games that I played that you don't give a fuck about. There was a bullet point there that said basically anything on PC she's uninterested in.
Oh yeah.
And you know that's why, because I bought it on PC instead of something else.
Okay.
Which, you know what, let's rewind back to that bullshit.
Yeah.
On the topic of games that I play that you don't give a fuck about, basically anything on PC you don't give a shit about.
Yes.
A lot of that is because, at least at our own setup, like the computer desk, there was no way to set up like a secondary seat that was like comfortable for viewing. So it kind of like, if I was playing anything on the PC, it was kind of like solitary, and like you weren't gonna be able to watch it and have a good time.
Yeah.
Which is like weirdly like impacted or influenced my decision to like get certain games on PC versus on console, because I know that if I get them on console, you might be a little bit more interested in them. But anyways, let's talk about Resident Evil now. After, you know, I mean, this was a series that you were familiar with. Like you said, you had the secondhand knowledge from my videos that you had watched. You heard me have a mental breakdown about Sheva and the AI and all that stupid shit.
Yes.
So after having played them, what was it like to actually yourself go through them?
I think initially you had kind of convinced me, well, I don't want to say forced me, but you
I influenced
it heavily suggested that we play Resi 5 and 6 together.
Yes.
I kind of went into it sort of anxious about it because I hadn't really played a game of that caliber, like a long form sort of like action game. Yeah, and I was nervous about the camera, and I was nervous about the movement, and
the controller too.
The controller.
It was probably the first time that you picked up a controller. Well, I mean, other than one other example, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, it was a lot of new stuff for me, and I was really nervous that I wouldn't be able to keep up, or that I wouldn't have a good time, and I wouldn't make it a good time for you, you know.
But that wasn't something I was worried about. This is a game that I have the fucking platinum trophy for that game. So I know that game like the back of my hand. Like I wanted to replay it, but I didn't want to play it with the AI. and I thought, hey, this is a cool opportunity to like introduce you to this sort of game, and it's an action game that we can play together.
So the first couple sessions were pretty overwhelming, like in terms of like learning everything and the movement in the camera, and there was a lot of moments where I had no idea where you were.
Yeah.
Like you were off, you were doing something, because you, on top of having all this game literacy, knew the game so well that you were just gone, you were off.
I don't want to say you were trailing behind.
Oh, I was. I 100% was.
You kind of like stuck behind, and not even that, like you were like, sometimes you'd walk into a room and I didn't even give you the chance to like break any of the boxes, because like I knew where they all were, and I'm like in there.
Yeah.
It was I'm sorry.
No, but I want to say that, having played 5 and 6 together, I do think we've gotten better at playing with each other.
Yeah.
And I think things that helped me, like initially when I started learning, was, having you as a partner to be able to like, if I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do, or if, I knew that you were there and you could be killing all the zombies and I could just turn it.
Yeah, I was kind of like a crutch that like because like this was like a tough, like you said, it was like a high impact action sort of shooting game with controls that you weren't familiar with. So there was like, this was not the sort of game that you would have picked up on your own to play.
Yeah.
But having me as a crutch there, having me as like as a backup, meant that you could still like go from the beginning of the game to the end and make it through and survive.
And there was that I don't remember what button it was, but there was that button on the controller where it was like locate partner.
Yeah. You have a whole dedicated button for that.
My finger was constantly hovering over that button, like just because I had a hard time with like the space of it, like orienting myself within the space and like finding out like.
That's interesting. Is like I noticed that's something I've noticed just in general with a lot of games that we've played together, is that like you have difficulty with like spatial awareness. Like you will walk down a corridor and like not be able to retrace your steps backwards, or like you won't pick out certain landmarks. Versus like I kind of always, whether I'm looking at the compass or looking at everything, like I kind of always know where I am.
But I think that comes from years of playing games.
I don't know, because what's weird is like you have more of a sense of that in real life than I do.
Because I drive.
Because you drive. I barely ever drove. I like went to the grocery store for my mom from time to time. I never like took highways or anything like that. So like you have like a better sense of navigation in real life. I don't know which way is north, south, east, west in real life. Like you put me on the street, I don't know where the fuck I am. But like in a video game, I can navigate a virtual environment and I can kind of tell like, oh, if I want to go back, it's that way.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, I think also initially, especially the shared inventory helped a lot, because you could either offload things on me, or I didn't have to be as worried about inventory, where I could just burn through bullets and you could just hand
and I could
me
just like hand you new bullets.
So that was less stressful for me, because I knew that even if I wasn't picking things up, things were getting picked up, and you could heal me and stuff like that. So honestly, I think Resi 5 is a really good game to sort of initiate somebody who wants to start playing these kinds of games with an already experienced partner, because it has all of those sort of like shared aspects that make it a lot easier.
What I was hoping was that like by playing it with each other, you'd be able to like watch me kind of because like you've watched me play other games, but I thought it'd be cool to like play a game with you that you are both like watching me play and playing with me at the same time, and you'd be able to like pick up on things. And there were like from the beginning to the end, like there were things that you got faster at. Like you started like you started to gain those intuitions about things. You started to like memorize the combination of buttons that made you reload. You started to kind of pick up on the cues of like how to navigate an environment. What are they going to throw at me? You started to like read the developer's intent, which is like a big fucking thing, I think, when it comes to like understanding level design and like intuiting things about it. One of the things I noticed was the menus. So the menus are like, they're pretty fucking clunky in that game.
Oh yeah.
At the beginning, you were like lost in those fucking menus. Like the fucking the 4 points and the corners and all the shit. It was complete fucking alien shit to you. But by the end, like you were able to like pretty easily like get what you wanted done and like move things around. And I remember you even suggesting things to me about the inventory. Like I was trying to like, oh, how do I fit this grenade? And you'd be like, oh, pass me one and then I'll take the health and combine, and now we have space. And I'd be like, damn, all right.
I'd like to think that by the end of 5, I became an okay partner. Like it wasn't as much of a question of you carrying me through the game, Like I don't want to say I was 100%, but I think
no. But there were points where I could like, I ran off and you fended for yourself for a minute, and I did like some objective that I knew would be like a little bit too complicated to like talk you through if you weren't familiar with it. And there were other points where like there was something like I knew something story driven was about to, or not story driven, but like a cool, interesting thing was going to come up, and I wanted you to do it. There were like boss fights where there was like a gimmick, and I like always made sure that like you had the gimmick, because I wanted you to have the full experience.
I mean, I think I was better than the AI by the end.
I mean, you didn't run through my ammo, but it's definitely, but like you said, it's a good game. I think what I learned through it is that it's a really, really good game to initiate someone. I mean, you have to have a little bit of experience with games beforehand, but if you run through the whole game from beginning to end, start to finish, you come out different on the end. I think if you really put the time, you didn't cheat, you didn't let the other person carry you. Also, by the end, you will, whether or not you like it, learn something about how to play video games that you can take with you into basically every other game that you ever play in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're ready to talk about this, but I also went into RE6 much more confident.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't any of that, oh my god, like, am I going to be able to do this? Like, you know.
I mean, there were a lot of changes that kind of bothered you.
Yes, but in terms of basic, like, game stuff.
Yeah. You weren't, like, worried whether or not you would, like, fail. Like, you understood that, like, the stakes are not that high. Like, you're fine. Yeah,
no, exactly. It was a lot less anxious.
Which is something I think maybe, I don't know if this is something that all new gamers have, because I feel like not everybody takes it as seriously, but something you've exhibited in a lot of games is, like serious nerves. Like, you've gotten like really nervous, like getting into situations, you panic sometimes. And I mean, we talked about being unfamiliar with controllers, but your gut reaction when something like doesn't work the way you want it to, or you can't figure something out, is to like just drop the controller and like you I mean, no, but like,
but I think that might be personal. I don't know if that
I think that might be personal, but by the end of Resident Evil 5 and by the beginning of Resident Evil 6, you didn't have that instinct anymore. Like if something was happening on the screen, you were gonna like solve that problem and you were gonna get past it. You weren't just gonna drop it and let someone else figure it out.
I think it mostly came to enemies. I think in other games, when there was an enemy or there was something that I had to fight, or there was, you know, danger of like me losing health or stuff like that, that's when I wouldn't know what to do, because I would just panic because I was scared of, you know, not being quick enough or not having that intuition. But that's something I really learned in Resi 5, because it's impossible to go through that game and not fight anybody.
Yeah, no. You have to like just like get used to that stress.
Yeah, I think there was a mechanical hurdle as much as there was an anxiety, like emotional one for me, because it really helped me like gain confidence and lose sort of that anxiety, sort of panic feeling when it came to like fighting situations.
Yeah,
for sure.
So something that I noticed was like critical to your enjoyment of Resident Evil 5 and 6 was, and this brings us back to the ideas of game literacy and the vocabulary of games and controller familiarity and stuff. One of the big things that really helped you out was gyro.
Yeah.
So when they ported over these two games to the Switch, and I think they did it for the fourth also, but we didn't play that because it's single player, but they added a gyro control option, which basically means that you can take your controller and you can move it around and basically do like pinpoint precision accuracy in the game with it. But you can also do big sweeping moves also, and you can use it to help you aim. And one of the things that you've had trouble with a lot is like, I mean, you're okay with like moving your camera with the second stick to like look around, but like precise movements to like hit enemies at certain points, it's not super intuitive. And part of that is the interface itself. It's like not the best for that. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they added gyro to these meant that you had this super accessible thing. I mean, like you had this challenge to overcome that was like using a second stick, and that was not something you ever really did before. And gyro was like a fast pass to kind of get through it. I was a little bit worried like letting you use it. I was kind of thinking like, as your guide through this fucking stupid journey, should I like force you to turn it off? Because like I know that like once you go into other games, they're not going to have this stuff for you, and you're not gonna, it's like I know that like eventually you have to take the training wheels off. You keep them for now, but you kept them on, and I think that was a big help for you.
I think maybe at the beginning I did kind of use them like to a fault.
Yeah, like you literally like would not touch the second stick. I noticed, which is like at points it'd be like turn while you're aiming. You're like, I can't. I was like, no, just put your fucking thumb. I know you're not using it, but like put your thumb on the stick in case.
But that's the thing, is I would honestly just like in the heat of the moment forget that I could turn my camera without gyro, you know? It was like this anyways. But it was very intuitive for me to be able to move the controller physically, you know, in the direction that I wanted to aim, for sure. But I do think as we played through, you know, Resi and other games, like I don't need that so much anymore. And I know how to use it, you know, effectively. I'm not just wildly like flailing my controller and trying to aim at something. No, I think it was a pretty effective training wheel. I did use it as a crutch, but I don't think so much anymore.
Well, it also helped because like it was something that you were familiar with, because we're going to talk about it later, but you played Breath of the Wild quite a bit before we had played these.
Yeah.
So, I mean, gyro was something you were already a little bit used to, and in Breath of the Wild they did it really interesting. I mean, actually, no, you know what? It was the same as Resident Evil, because it was regular controls for when you're moving around, and then as soon as you aim, the gyro turns on.
Yeah, it was the same thing.
Yeah, so it was the same thing. So it was something you were already used to just like not as fast. So yeah, no, it definitely helped you out. It was funny to me how like there were certain things that like you were able to do in these games because you're new to this that I couldn't do. One of the coolest things was the control. So in the ports, they had added like a new dual stick control, which basically allowed you to control it like a typical third-person action game, and that way is like objectively better. Like you can literally like strafe in Resident Evil, which you could not do before. So you literally like it is objectively superior to the tank controls because you can do more things quicker, and I could not for the life of me use that shit because I just had so much muscle memory about like how Resident Evil used to work.
Yeah.
And so it was really, really funny to me is that like we're playing this game that I am like technically better at, that I'm walking you through, but I'm using this like old school shitty fucking control scheme, and you're using the modern control scheme that like every other game you've ever played will use and has used.
Yeah.
I thought that was really fucking neat. Like how we'd go, like we'd start the game and it would revert to my control scheme because I was player one, and then you would have to go to the menu to improve yours. Like I thought that was so backwards.
But honestly, for me, I didn't see it as like I am choosing the harder controls.
Well, it wasn't harder. I mean, basically what I'm trying to say is like it was the normal way to play given what you've played, given how you've now been introduced to modern games.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to me how it should work that way, but I just have so much muscle memory with the old way that because I already have skill and knowledge and familiarity with the game, being able to like preserve my muscle memory is like worth more to me than struggling with a new control scheme until I rebuild it, you know?
I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but when we first started Resi 5, I was having a really hard time with the controls and I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not something that I thought of, or I just in my head all games, you know, control the same way. And I was having such a hard time, and then you changed the controls for me.
Yeah, and suddenly it was
suddenly it was so much better.
Yeah, it was like watching a different person play the game. It was so crazy.
Yeah. And the tank controls, like, I don't understand how you play that way. I just don't. Like, to me, it's so counterintuitive.
Yeah, I know.
But I think, you know, we were talking about Breath of the Wild before. I think that's probably had influence on that as well, is that it's the control scheme from Breath of the Wild. And from most, you know,
every
most games
game you're
these
ever
days,
going to play, yeah.
So I think, you know, because I had just come off sort of finishing Breath of the Wild, so I think that's, I just assumed this is how it's going to be, you know?
Yeah.
But I was happy I was able to play that way.
I was happy you were able to, too. I'm happy that they gave you the option for that.
Yeah.
Because, like, without that, you would have learned... Because one of the things I think I had told you, like, I briefed you on before we started the series, was like, I told you that 6 is going to feel a lot like Breath of the Wild. You're going to enjoy it. It's going to be a regular control scheme. But before you get there, you have to, like, chug through this fucking shitty game with these dumb tank controls. And the fact that you did... Like, I didn't think that they ported them. So the fact that you were able to, like, switch them was, like, a big relief for me. Like, oh my god. She can play with regular controls and not, like, build this... like arguably very bad muscle memory that I have that like is completely useless in a modern context.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So given the fact that the games seem to like put in some effort and like there was some thought put into like new players and stuff like that with the new control schemes and the gyro, there were some like weird nitpicks that I had. So I remember after playing through 5, like by the end of it you were having a great time, and then we started 6 and it was really dumb because the tutorial didn't the tutorial starts and you have to complete it before you can get through the rest, but you can't actually go into the control settings before you complete the tutorial, which meant you had to complete the tutorial without gyro and without like the normal control scheme you were used to, which is really, really dumb. I mean, given that like they actually added them to the game.
The tutorial was legitimately the hardest part of the game for me.
Yeah, because you just couldn't like shoot anybody because you were so used to it, which made me feel again like a little bit bad. Like, should I be not letting you use gyro because it's something you're overly relying on? But I mean, at the end of the day, as soon as we completed the tutorial, you turned it back on and then you were operating like a great partner. And I mean, whether or not you're learning like quote unquote the right way to play or the way that like games are typically played, I don't know if that matters as much to me as if you're having fun, if you're actually being able to like perform well in the game. Like, what I thought was cool about Resi 5 at least was that because we were using different control schemes, I literally did not know what buttons on your controller did what. Because it changed the sticks, but it also changed like the firing and knife buttons. You know, typically when we played games together that like we're both using the same control scheme, I would tell you, oh, press A, oh, do this. I got to finally tell you, instead of like telling you press this, I didn't know what the fuck button it was on the controller. I would just say take out your knife, and you'd be able to do that. Kind of like how I was talking before about like when I jump in a game, I don't know what button I'm pressing, I just do it. You got to that point because I would tell you, oh, just shoot that guy, and I wouldn't tell you what button was aim, what button was shoot. You knew that. Yeah,
no, I did get to that point, which felt really, really nice. I felt it obviously more in Resi 6 because I had already played, you know, I had been playing for a little bit. But no, I understand. Like, there was really a point where I did fumble sometimes, like for more complicated things. But in terms of just, you know, shooting and reloading and the basic stuff, I didn't really have to think about that anymore.
Yeah, it was like it had automated itself in your brain.
Yeah, which is really fun. Like that, I get it. Like that's the fun part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So given that this is a series that you've experienced basically completely at this point, either as a spectator or as a player with me, what I think is really cool is as someone who's new to games, this is a series that you can now comment on. So what is your opinion on it as like a whole? Like how do you feel about like where it went? How do you feel about the points I made in my videos? Do you think I'm right about this? Like what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, coming into it, I didn't really have any of the, the cultural context or anything like that, but, having you there to kind of fill in the gaps for me was really interesting. And, you see the split between, the Umbrella series and, the other one.
That's something I made up, by the way.
Okay.
That's not, like, legit. I like, invented those. Well, okay, I didn't invent those terms. I based them off something, but, like... But,
I do see it. I see that there's, like, a split between games in the series where they're not all...
Some are, like, focused on weird, like, spooky things, and some are focused on, like, umbrella, conspiracy, government things, and fucking, like...
Exactly. So they're part of a series, but they don't really feel like games that follow each other. At least some of them,
Like, some of them basically are, like, horror experiences that stand on their own. They have a start, they have an end, and that's it. And then some of them are, like, part of a bigger picture, and there's a conspiracy, and there's a big plot, and it's, like, those ones are more fun to make fun of, the story. Like, we made more fun of Resident Evil 5, I think, than we've made fun of anything.
Oh, well, I think Resi 6 even more. Like,
well, some of the campaigns. Some of them were more, like, they were more, like, Leon's campaign was... That's something we should point out. We played through every campaign in 6.
Yeah, for sure.
So we completed all this shit. Even Ada's campaign, which is goofy as fuck.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really interesting to see a series like that from beginning to end. And, like you were saying, they're all very different. Like, I would call Resi 7 a horror game through and through, and then I would call Resi 6 an action game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not... Like, I've also kind of seen through you, I've also seen Metal Gear, and they're all kind of the same genre.
Well, I haven't played all of those games since we've lived together.
But I know about them, and I'm familiar with the kinds of games that they are, and I feel like that as a series, without going into it too much, I feel like that as a series is a lot more cohesive than Resident Evil. In terms of genre, in terms of story.
But do you think there's anything wrong with, like, diverting? Because, I mean, you and I both had a lot of fun with 5 and 6.
Yeah, for sure. No, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think I can see how some people might have been upset about it. Like, I can see how having played one of the games and having another game come out and expecting something and not getting it could be disappointing. But for me, having access to the entire series and being fresh and not having all this context, I don't see a problem with that. I just had a good time. In terms of your videos, I think I tend to agree with the points you made about Resident Evil. But I also do think that I'm biased because coming into it I had already seen your videos and then was thinking in terms of those arguments while I was playing the games. So I don't know if I'm the most credible source when it comes to that.
So basically what you're saying is that if all of this effort I put into introducing you to video games was not actually to improve your life, but really just to perform like a perfectly controlled experiment where I introduce someone to a certain video game series that they've never played before, just to see if their opinions are the same as mine in order to validate myself, what you're saying is that you don't think that would be a right way to go about this?
No, I think your scientific method is flawed.
Fuck.
Because I had already been exposed to your arguments.
Fuck.
Sorry.
I'm joking. You're fucking joking. Let's talk about a game.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. We've talked about games that I have played that you've watched. We've talked about games that I've played that you don't give a shit about. We've talked about games that we've played together. What are some games how are some games I don't know, because it's up for discussion.
Yeah.
Let's talk about games that you have, since we've moved in together, for whatever reason, decided to play on your own.
Well, I think the main one is Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
I have dabbled in other things, but the one that I've started and finished and been playing is Breath of the Wild. I think that the main reason why I was so interested in that game is because I was watching you play it, and the open world was something that I kind of had never seen before.
True, because like the open world genre is like a very new sort of thing. It's like, you know, given the area of gaming that you had played, none of these were open world. I
mean, I want to say the most open world game I had experienced before that was Super Mario 64. And that was just because you could explore the castle and like whatever.
Yeah.
But that was it. That was the extent of it.
It wasn't like a fully realized ecosystem and like systems that control all sorts of weird interactions. Like it wasn't like what we call an open world game today.
Yeah, and so I got really, really interested in that. And I remember watching you play and you doing like story-driven things and me just wanting to see you do like the randomest stuff and like seeing like I wanted to have you interact with certain things and to see how it would work or you know. And so I decided that I wanted to also play, but I think I want to say for like a few months at least while I was playing, since I started the game, I wasn't doing anything story related.
You were just like fucking around.
I was
like,
fucking around. I was picking apples. I was,
Yeah.
I was cooking. I was doing so many things.
You just swore on. I don't know if you've sworn before, but I just want to let you know you swore. Are you okay with swearing?
Yeah, I swore before. You didn't hear me?
No, I didn't. I wasn't paying attention. Sorry, I just heard you say fucking around. So, are you cool with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, sorry,
Are you cool with that?
Yeah, I'm cool with that. Continue,
Okay, cool.
please. Thank you.
Yeah, no, so it was just, I was so captivated by the open world that that's really, I was only doing stuff like that. Like I was picking apples, I was cooking, I was chasing around some chickens, and then it was only, I want to say like 3-4 months in that I actually did something.
I don't think it was that much time.
I think it was. I think for a really long time I did whatever I wanted. I built my house, I did stuff like that, and then finally I started, doing the temples.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you helped me a lot with that.
Well, I think part of it was that like I kind of knew that like once you did do some of the temples, you would get abilities that would help you out in the main. So there was part of it was that.
Yeah.
What I think is really cool is that the way like you got into Zelda through me by like watching, because for context, like the reason I had already played Zelda before we moved in together.
Yeah.
Because the Switch came out like right before we moved in. I played Zelda, I beat it, and then I had no reason to replay it until they announced that DLC.
Yeah.
And then I started playing the hard mode campaign. So what you were watching me do was like the hard mode, and it kind of, anyways, what's cool to me is that it parallels a lot the way, because I had basically like I had given you my controller a couple of times and just let you like fuck around in my world. I went back to like my main file and I let you just like collect apples and do whatever the hell you wanted. And it was really strange because like that parallels exactly with how I got into like the first Zeldas. Like I used to play so much Majora's Mask. It's one of my favorite games ever, and I have never done anything story related in that game. I've never done anything that mattered, because basically what it was that when my stepbrother came into my life, he brought all these video games with him, and he was older than me, and this was one of the games he had, and he didn't want me to like play any games that like I could like fuck up and like progress for him, that he didn't want me to. So he'd always drop me in there and tell me like just fuck around, and I would just fuck around. I'd do and Majora's Mask was the perfect game for it, because like the 3-day cycle would restart you. So I started playing Zelda by being just a dumbass who would take a controller sometimes, walk around, do like absolutely nothing important, and then hand it off to him who would actually play the game.
Yeah.
So it's really funny to me that like in this modern age you were still able to have the same intro to this series that I had.
Well, I think it's important to mention I do have some experience with Zelda. I played, Phantom Hourglass on my DS. I knew about the series, I knew about the lore. I've had experience with Zelda, but it's just that this game specifically was unlike anything I'd ever seen.
Yeah, because of the genre, or because of the open world nature.
Yeah, and we mentioned this before too, so I think it's important to go back to it in terms of the fighting, in terms of the combat.
Yeah.
I was still at that point when I was playing. This was before Resi.
Yeah.
And I was still at that point where that still made me really, really nervous. So you were often next to me when I was playing, and when I would encounter something, I would either try to tiptoe around them and avoid them, or if I couldn't avoid them, let's say it was a boss fight, you would do it for me. You beat all the Ganons for me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that means I cheated or that I didn't complete the game.
That's the thing. Like you did what you wanted to do in the game, and everything you didn't want to do, but that you had to get past.
Yeah.
It was like you'd pass it off. I mean, I remember like a few times like you'd get to a situation and I'd see you like tiptoeing around. You're like, ah, and like you knew you had to get through it, and I'd be like, do you want me to do it for you? And be like, yes, please. And then I would fucking grab it, like kick everybody's ass, and then it would go back to you, like picking up their bones and shit.
Yeah, but I feel like maybe now if I had to go back and replay Zelda, I feel like I might be less nervous about it.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a weird little playthrough because I did everything but the fighting.
Well, I mean, you did fight some people on your own, but you definitely didn't explore like the depths of the combat.
I didn't do any of the big guys with the rock guys or
all
those optional bosses. I didn't fuck with those. Like that was just not what I wanted to do.
Yeah, so I mean, I remember after you got into this again, because a lot of this had to do with the genre of game it is, the fact that it's an open world game, and it was the first time. I remember the first open world game I played was Destroy All Humans, and it just fucking blew my mind that you could do whatever the hell you wanted. So I get that was a big deal for you. And after that, you just got really interested in like anytime we heard news about like any open world game, you'd get really interested. I showed you a little bit of like Grand Theft Auto and what it looks like to roam around this like fully realized world with all these like societal systems kind of like rebuilt into it. And I remember when Red Dead Redemption came out, you kind of like asked me if I would get it because you really wanted to see it. I didn't end up getting it because I don't give a fuck about it, but like you were like, oh, are you gonna get it? Like I want to watch you play it. I was like, no. I'm like, sorry to let you down.
But I was really interested in Grand Theft Auto. I never really played it.
Yeah, you didn't really understand like how far it goes.
Yeah, but like you were showing me just like the internet stuff, like the crazy stuff.
We spent like a whole day just like going on the web. Yeah.
It blew my mind that people would spend so much time just doing this little tiny part of the game. game.
Yeah. You didn't like Spider-Man very much, though.
Well, it's not that I didn't like Spider-Man. It like I enjoyed watching you play it. I got it. It was goofy. It was funny. It's just I guess the beat 'em up style of it wasn't really my thing. But I thought it was cute. I thought it was funny. I liked hearing the conversations like between him and the police lady or whatever. I forget what her name was. But or hearing the guy on the radio or like the world of it and the story.
Maybe that's like another case of like what the game is to me, the player, versus what the game is to you, the spectator, being like a very different thing. Like
I think
to me, that game was like swinging and like running on buildings and doing shit. I don't give a fuck about any of the characters. I don't give a shit about like any of the fighting. I just want to swing, and that's like my whole life in that game. Mm-hmm. And like I guess that's just another case of like what you're getting from it isn't what I'm getting from it. So I guess we have different experiences there.
But like I wouldn't be interested in playing Spider-Man. It doesn't seem like the kind of game I would enjoy playing. But I really did like enjoy watching you play.
I gave it to you one time and you did the swinging, and then you were just like, yeah, I get it. You just give it back to me.
Yeah, it's not my thing, I guess.
You play a little bit of Mario Odyssey when it came out. You started your own file on it, but that never really stuck. You kind of stopped after a while.
Yeah, that too. It wasn't. I played it. I got it.
It was like basically it was just the nostalgia that brought everybody into that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I mean, I'm gonna get shit on every time I talk about this. People shit on me.
I don't think either of us really liked Mario Odyssey or like.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that stuck with. Like it was fine. Yeah. It was fine.
There you have it, folks. Mario Odyssey is fine. So the new Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
So like hearing all the news about it and everything leading up to it. This is something that you were very, very interested in. Well, you were pretty interested in the beginning, but it's not a series that either of us has ever played. I've never fucking played a single one. You never played any of them.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like you said, I didn't know about Animal Crossing. You didn't know about Animal Crossing. But what's interesting is that you saw me play and you saw the things I'm interested in, my hobbies outside of gaming, and you said you were like building
little model houses at the time, and I was like, this is literally what Animal Crossing is gonna let you do, except you're not gonna have to fucking fold paper and like get glue all over your fingers.
Yeah, and you had pointed that out to me that like I would be interested in Animal Crossing, and I said okay, and I knew that there was one coming out soon, and I kind of knew the hype around it. But
you had no idea like what it actually was.
No, I had no idea. So you got me a copy of Animal Crossing for the DS, so I could try it, and I liked it. I really liked it. It was kind of. It was kind of bittersweet because all the online functionality was gone, and like a lot of what makes Animal Crossing cool wasn't there anymore. Yeah. But I got the gist of it, and it made me really excited.
It gave you like a taste of like what the new one would actually be, so you kind of realized like, oh damn, that's really something I'm interested in. Yeah.
So as of right now, it's out, but I haven't bought it. Yet. But you made me realize the other day that this is the first game I'm gonna have bought for myself in years.
That you are getting for yourself because like you want it.
Years. Since I was a teenager. I think the last game I bought for myself was Guitar Hero.
That's kind of crazy.
I know.
Like everything else has been something either like one of your siblings has gotten for themselves or
you,
something I've gotten for myself that you've tagged along with.
So I'm really excited about it. So I don't know when this video is going to come out, but maybe I'll have played it by then. Yeah, no, I'm really excited for that game.
It's going to be really cool. I'm really excited for you to play it. I'm excited to like have you be player one, and I'll just like fuck around and like collect shit for you.
Yeah, for once.
That's the main shit. Do you want to talk about VR a little bit?
Yeah, recently, so you got a VR headset. You've been messing around with that, and you did.
And it's something like really fun. That's like it's fun to like share that experience with other people.
Yeah, we've made our parents try it and stuff. It's like it's a crazy.
No, we haven't.
You have.
No. Your dad? No, he didn't end up trying it.
Really?
No, only Alex tried it.
Oh, I thought your dad tried it.
Yeah, my dad like took a nap. he was like watching. He's like, oh, this is crazy stuff. I'm gonna go take a nap.
You serious? I thought he tried it.
No, he left the room and he just like took a nap on the couch.
Oh man. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no. I like how you say our parents tried it and you're referring to only my dad.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Well.
Exposed.
Anyways, so you did show me VR a little bit, and it's really cool. Like I played Super Hot a little bit. I played Total Recall.
Total Recall.
No.
Yes, Arnold Schwarzenegger showed up. You played Robo
Recall. I played some other stuff. It's really cool. I don't know if I see myself like actually playing a whole game in VR, but yeah, it's great.
It's like a whole different bucket than gaming though. It's very much like an experience that you like showed it. Like as someone who like has VR, you kind of have to like play the role of like the chauffeur now, like
Yeah.
what's the word for it?
You're the person who owns the console who
Yes.
shows it off.
So it's not a console, it's a headset.
I'm sorry.
It might, anyways. Not too.
I'm so sorry.
Listen, you've just been gaming. You've been a gamer for like a year. Let's, hold your horses.
Wow. I see.
Yeah, no, like it's fun to bring this out to people. They're like, this is what it is. This is how it looks. But like, yeah, it's hard to like try to translate like what playing a whole game is like on something like that.
It's really more for the experience, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like as a hobby, like showing someone VR isn't the same as like showing you Resident Evil.
Oh yeah, no.
Gaming is very much different than VR.
You're showing somebody VR for different reasons.
So beyond just having now gaming as an act, like as a physical, but like as a thing that you do as an action, as a hobby, how has knowing about games and these sorts of things impacted your, it's not to say life, but I mean like your way of going, like
my way of going.
Your way of you're carrying on. You never tell you what my nonno says whenever you ask him how he's doing?
What?
Whenever you're like, hey, nonno, how you doing? He never says like, oh, good. He always goes, oh, carry on. So like, it's like how it affects your carry on.
How it affects my carry on. So it's, you're right. So there is like the physical act of playing a game and like getting new games and all that stuff. Like that's great and that's really, really fun. But it's also the whole culture around games that I've really been exposed to. And so, let's say for example, Resident Evil, we'll pick up the game and then you'll give me sort of the cultural significance around the game. Or like when Smash came out, I didn't understand how big of a deal it was.
That like they brought back all these characters.
Yeah,
it's like you didn't know that like this was a game that like cut characters in the past.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I just hadn't really thought about it in that way. But so you had showed me like all the reveals and things like that, and so there's this whole culture around it that I'm now exposed to, and it's really cool. And I'm more versed in like what it takes to build a game and the music and the developers and the studios and all that stuff. And I think it's really cool. Like we watch the Nintendo Directs and we watch E3 and we watch the Game Awards and we watch all these things, and I now have the context for those things. And like a couple years ago at E3 when like God of War was winning all the awards.
Yeah, you had seen it.
I understood, and I knew what your gripes with it were, and it wasn't just completely foreign to me. Like, it was really interesting. Like, I don't watch the Oscars, I don't watch the Grammys, but I watch the Game Awards. And I think that's really cool.
I mean, I've made the argument before that the fact that it's like an active part of your life means that like you're more invested in it. The example I always give is like, if you take the bus, you are more likely to get pissed when they do something stupid to the bus, like they cut a route, because like it's something you do every day, and it feels like you're more invested in it than you are. Like they do something with a movie, I don't give a fuck. Like at the end of the day, I'll either watch it or I won't. But like if it's something that I am doing every day and they change it, I'm gonna be like, whoa. Yeah. It feels like you have a more personal connection to these sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we don't, we do watch shows and we watch movies and things, but this feels, exactly, it feels more personal.
You're like finding out like news about the things that you are going to be doing, like not like the things you're playing, but the things you are doing in a few months' time.
Yeah, like I independently now seek out like news about the new Animal Crossing. Yeah. Like independent of you, which is crazy.
There's also the fact that we have a lot of critical conversations about games. Yeah. So, I mean, I see that you wrote here in our notes that it's not just a lecture anymore. So,
it's true.
I mean, I do kind of get like lost in conversation sometimes, especially when I'm writing a video. I'll just like repeat my points to you. Yeah. And one of my favorite things about us as a couple is that like we are very critical of media, especially since we've moved in together. I know that makes us sound like fucking
giant assholes,
but we
the biggest like snobs.
Well, it's a different, like, ever since I've lived with you, it's different than like I'd go to like movies with my parents or something, and we watch a movie, and then like what I hate is like almost like the walk of shame as you leave a movie theater, and then everybody's just like, that was good, wasn't it, kids? Yeah, it was. And then like we don't talk about it, we just like go home and then like do whatever the fuck we were doing. Like I like the fact that like we will see something, we will like pick something out to see, and then like talk about it for like the whole night, and like or talk about it for like upcoming weeks. We're very critical of those sorts of things, and gaming is so rich in like in the opportunity to critique it, because there are just so many components of it and so many moving parts that like we can talk about these things now, and I can explain to you a mechanic, and even if you haven't experienced it yourself, you can kind of like understand what I'm saying and have a conversation about a game you've never even seen.
I mean, if we talk about TV shows and stuff, there are TV shows that we have watched years ago that we still have conversations about to this day, and I feel like now as a gamer
Excuse me. Jesus Christ.
I feel like we can play games now that we can continue to have critical conversations about, like, you know, Resident Evil and stuff like that. And I feel like that's just, it's kind of how we like to enjoy media.
Yeah.
You know, we don't really watch, like, TV, like, indiscriminately or movies, and we kind of...
We pick out what we want.
We pick out what we want. We
Yeah.
listen to, like, stuff that, you know, we hear about movies and stuff, we go watch them, and then we talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same way with games, and it's really cool now that I can actively participate in that.
Mm-hmm. Something else that we do together that's a big part of at least my experience with games is, I mean, as a video essayist, is that we watch a lot of video essays together.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate the way it's kind of set up. And now is different because it's a time of quarantine, but, like, typically during the day I'm at work and you have a different schedule, but sometimes you're at home, and any time that I have that I want to spend on, like, doing something for myself has to be while I'm with you, because I don't really have alone time. So,
Sorry.
well, whatever. But it means that, like, you know, there are video essayists that I watch. There are friends that I have that make really good videos, and I want to watch them. And so, unfortunately,
No.
you have to be there for that. And so, it's not just like games that you have a different perspective on now, but like you've watched me watch a lot of videos about games. And like sometimes, like I'll be watching a video and someone will make an interesting point, and you'll be like, oh. Whereas like before, you would kind of just kind of become background noise, and you'd be on your phone or whatever. Like you're more interested in not just talking about games and hearing me talk about games, but even hearing other people talk about games.
Yeah, well, I think it all comes back to, being a little bit more game literate now. Is
Yeah.
that I understand the terms, I have context for them. There are certain things that you watch that I still don't give a shit about, but
The very like academic
the
ones
very
you kinda
academic
get
ones,
tired
are
of,
the very like heavy, like dense ones. But there are a lot of creators and video essayists that you watch that I also really enjoy.
Yeah. Like Mark Brown specifically, like his Designing in Disability series
Yeah.
was something that like you were very invested in.
I mean, I latched onto it. I kind of already work in that field, so it was like something that I related to quite a bit.
It was a good like intersection of stuff that you were very familiar with and like stuff that you had never really thought about, like how does having a certain disability affect your way to play games, and how are people already solving that problem.
Yeah, no, it was a really, really good series. Like it was something that I could relate to quite a bit, and it was very accessible to a non-gaming audience.
Yeah.
So it was really, really
I feel
good.
like a lot of his videos are. I mean, not to like point out one person, but like there's a lot of people.
Well, I think it's more recently we've
Yeah.
like watched his series, but
I feel like the best video essays, though, anyways, already get across the idea of like being able to talk about a game without the audience having actually played that game.
yeah.
And the best are the ones that can talk about games without the audience having to know anything about games in general.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people I know at least make videos much like that, so they're really, really easy to follow for you or anyone else.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I mean, there's also the rise recently, because this is kind of a riff on it, and I meant to do this at the beginning, but there's also been the rise of like people moving in together gaming videos.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
like
talked about this,
we were really into girlfriend reviews for a while. We still watch some of their stuff,
Yeah.
which kind of pissed me off because that was literally like an idea I had kind of like thought about when we were doing God of War together.
Well, it kind of just happened just as we had officially.
Because I thought that was like such an interesting experience that I was having, that like I am hating this game, but she's liking it, and like if it weren't for you, I would not be playing this. I kind of wanted to do it from like the opposite perspective, like what it's like to like this is a review of what it's like to play God of War because your girlfriend wants you to, because it sucks. And of course, there's another video essayist who I've shown you before, Rasputin, the guy with the bag on his head. Anyways, he's done that series about, I think it's called Gaming for a Non-Gamer, and he's done different topics on it. And we, every time one of those comes out, we watch it together.
Yeah, no,
and, like,
it's
a lot
super
of those,
relatable.
A lot of like the points he makes have parallel. Like just in his last video, he made that point about guns.
Yeah.
Which I like. That was like we had the same experience.
It sparked a whole conversation.
Yeah, we sparked a whole conversation after, because he made one point. He was like, just as a side note, like I thought it was really interesting that my wife didn't know anything about guns, and then he's like, well, then that made me realize that the only things I know about guns have come from video games. And it was the same experience we had. Like I had to sit down and explain to you one time how a shotgun works.
Listen,
Like you didn't understand like the scatter. You were just like, it makes a big boom and people in movies explode. And I was like, yeah, but like you must know the mechanics behind it if you're gonna use it. Or like machine guns. You had no idea what it was like. And I remember at one point in Resi, we had 2 machine guns at one point. One looked like an AK-47 and one looked like something else, which you're nodding, but you have no idea what I'm talking about right now. But to me, like an AK-40, and we talked about this specific gun before. I was like, this is such an iconic weapon, not just in video games, but in like pop culture, in history. It's like this weapon has a silhouette that like is unmistakably like is super identifiable. It's like an icon. It's not even a weapon. You don't know anything about it, and it was mind-boggling shocking to me when I was like, oh, take the AK-47, it'll have less accuracy, but it'll be more strong. It'll be stronger, because like that's just, you can intuit that about that, but you didn't know what the fuck that meant, and you didn't know what gun that was.
But you gotta understand, like, to you it's so natural, but that's not a given for you know, people who A, aren't gamers, and B, don't hunt.
I know.
You know, it's not.
It was like a validating moment when like Rasputin brought it up that like
it's not me. I'm not the
problem.
problem.
No, it's not. It's literally that like everything I feel like I know a decent bit about guns, but all of that comes from video games, which is really really strange to find, like, to have to admit, because some guy with a bag on his head said this in a video.
Yes, he just because his profile picture is a bag, he just actively walks around with a bag on his head.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He doesn't have a face. Yeah. So, anyways, all that to say, this isn't really like a riff on that, but like that is something we've been conscious of. Is that like this has been a really unique experience, and we talk about how, well, not a unique experience, but it's been an interesting experience to like move in with someone who, I mean, from your perspective, to move in with someone who has this hobby that is like kind of pretty fucking interesting, that you've kind of gained an interest in and kind of have adopted, and it's not just us going through that, it's a lot of people, and people are turning that into content, and I mean, in a way we are now too. We're just trying to do it in a very different way than anyone else has done, so nobody can, you know, blame us for ripping off their shit, but
no, it really is a movement. Like, I think that
it's a revolution.
The kids with the video games, you know, like that were gaming in the 90s,
are growing up and they're living with partners now who maybe don't.
It's a really interesting thing to be a part of, I think.
Yeah, a lot of people are going through this. Before we go to because the last note I have here is about the generational gap topic, which is something we talked about, but also the gender gap topic, which might be more interesting. But do you want to, I don't know what I think we said something, I don't remember what we said we were going to say about this. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean, the generational gap, I think we wanted to talk about the fact that, you know, you kind of have experienced this your whole life, but I think I'm kind of new to it, where
true.
To expose our parents to these games, you know, the Gen Xers and whatever, it's hard. It's not.
Yeah, I've seen that with you. It's like you're not.
I am now that I know these things. Now that I'm excited about games, I try to communicate that to my parents, and it falls to deaf ears. Like, it's just.
I see, like, there's like, I've just become accustomed to the fact that, like, no matter how fucking cool this is, like, this is something I can never talk to my parents about, because it just, like, their eyes glaze over. It's weird. It's really, really weird.
And I feel like that's a sweeping statement. Like, not all Gen Xers are like that.
No, but, like, a lot of them are, and I know that I've, like, given up. I don't even try, and I noticed that now this is a new thing. Like, sometimes your parents will ask you, hey, what's up? Have you watched any shows? And, like, it gets to, like, a weird point when you're like, no, you know, I haven't really watched any new shows. Like, what do you do every day? Because, like, Gen Xers, like, they are, like, the
TV generation.
TV generation. Thank you for saying it so I didn't have to. But
no, but it's true.
No, so like when they're like, you don't watch TV, like what do you do? And then it's like, well, we've been playing games. Games? What's that? And then you start to talk about it a little bit, and like nobody goes, they really don't give a fuck.
It's really sad because, you know, I've talked actively, like I've mentioned it to you, how I want to expose, like we talked about a game, I'm like, man, my mom would really like this, or like I pinpoint something about a game that like my
you're like
would
this,
really
they
like.
would really really enjoy this like one aspect of something.
But to expose them to it, you know, implies, you know, that I have to, like the way you did for me, give them all the basis of, you know, game literacy, or also pique their interest, which is something difficult to do.
See, I've only successfully done it once, and I had like the in of all ins. I told my very Greek father, I'm going to bring a game about Greek mythology, and he's like, Greek mythology? Well, he didn't sound
Your
like
dad
that.
doesn't
But
sound like
he
that.
might have like activated something like Greek mythology. Come, I will bring this souvlaki. Show me this video game.
He instantly became the dad from My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Show me God of War. I want to heal Zeus. He's like fucking like activated. He's like a sleeper agent, but like for Tzatziki. That was the only time I'd ever did it successful, and that was like the easiest fucking thing. Like Greeks are incredibly gullible. Fucking, no, but I mean like you could show them something that they hate, and they're like, oh, Greek made this. Oh, Greek made this. Very good art movement, beautiful.
So just show him Metal Gear Solid and tell him a Greek made it.
No, that wouldn't work. But that's the thing. Like you like I've only been able to do it once, and it was hinging on this perfect pivot point of like it has to do with Greek culture, kind of, not really.
So, but I think that's what we wanted to say about this, is that I am, through discovering games.
Yeah, this is a problem you've been exposed to now.
I want to expose my family to it.
And I'm like,
I've watched you like it come up. Like I know, like if video games come up in a conversation, it's just like just drop it. It's not worth it. And like I've watched you like you're like, no, I can do it. I'm like, No, little train, you can't. Like, you
It's so
can't.
sad. Because, like, I'm having such a good time, and my parents genuinely want to know what I'm up to, but it's just, I don't know, man. It's hard.
Let's talk about gender.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what do we have to say about it?
I mean, I don't think it's...
You're the expert.
I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on this. I think I've talked to you about this too, is that, you know, coming into these games now at the age that I'm at, I've experienced a lot of frustration where, like, man, why didn't I get into this earlier? You know, but I really do think, like, without getting too, you know, philosophical about it, I think the fact that I was raised a girl and a typical girl made it so that I wasn't exposed to those kinds of games. My dad, when I was a kid, played Doom on the computer, played all these crazy video games, was super into them, but I never got exposed to them because, well, I don't want to say because, but I think part of it was because he didn't think I'd be interested.
But I mean, you did get exposed to other games that were, you know, pretty complicated because of that too. Like, my parents never played video games, so if there was a game, it was because, like, I saw it at Blockbuster.
Yeah.
My dad never got a game that he wanted to play and said, hey, let's try this out. You know, like, you were introduced to Paper Mario and Lara Croft and fucking Tomb Raider and all that shit.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. It's just, I don't know. I feel like even, you know, when you're a young kid in school and things like that, I feel like your interests get oriented through, like, towards something that's more typical for your gender.
Yeah.
And I feel like I would have really been into gaming had I started at the same time as you and had that interest.
You wouldn't have these
developed...
literacy problems if,
If I would have, you know, gotten into those games earlier, you wouldn't have had to do all this work now. And, like, I would have been able to have such a better time.
So it's like the system of discrimination.
It's the system's fault.
Fault that I have to do this extra work.
Exactly.
So what you're saying is this system that has oppressed you has caused me to do extra work. So who's really oppressed? You who didn't get to play these games, or me who had to teach you to play the game? Maybe I'm the one who's oppressed.
Maybe. But yeah, that's probably just all I wanted to say about it. It was just like a reflection that I had.
Yeah.
Coming into these games, like, man, like why wasn't this an interest that I had earlier? Or why wasn't
like, what are the reasons that it, like, you know, like your upbringing, and like what are all the reasons that this was not something that you ever thought you could be interested in?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad we're able to play through Resident Evil, and now you think you're a real gamer, and you know you're
I don't think I'm a real gamer.
You're you know, ready to tackle the wild world of Animal Crossing.
Yeah, dude, like, that's the perfect lead up to play Resident Evil.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I think I'm finally ready to play Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
Maybe after that I'll play Bloodborne. We'll see.
After you just shit on it live.
I'm not gonna play Bloodborne. It looks like the most boring shit in the world.
I don't know how I want to do the outro. I might do it on my own. You wanna just... I figure, like, I just need an abrupt ending, because, like, this is a weird conversation to have, and there's no way to just, like, talk about it less and let it fade away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just need to, like, shoot the camera and shut the fuck up, you know?
So do that.
How do I do it?
You're the expert, dude.
What's a good poem?
Roses are red, violets are blue.
Donkey Kong,
How about you?
Jungle Beat 2. Hey, welcome back. It might not be super clear, but this is an audio insert. It might sound the same as the original audio, so I just wanted to specify that this is recorded like a couple of days later.
Yep.
So yeah, so in going back to record all the footage that we recorded of all the games that we needed to fucking talk about in this video, there was one game that, like, we forgot existed that we had played that I thought would be it was just a really fucking, and you know, for good reason.
Yeah, I think we blocked it out.
Yeah, it was complete garbage. So I thought it would be fun to end on this note, because it's kind of the antithesis to the whole video here, because the whole point is, like, how I kind of, you know, I took someone, you, who were not a gamer, and I kind of threw you through the tunnel of Resident Evil, and when you came out on the other side, suddenly, like, you can play games, and it's like this magic thing. And now that you can do that, here's this game that is, like, complete ass. It is the worst. It's like all its marketing would suggest that it's like the perfect game to introduce your significant other to games through, and it's not at all.
It was so disappointing.
It legit, like, pisses you off, which is
really
funny.
I have such strong feelings about this game.
Anyways, this game is Pikachu, whatever the fuck it's called.
It's the new Pokemon.
It's, well, not the new Pokemon. There was another one.
Oh,
anyways, yeah? Sorry to correct you.
Oh, that's okay.
You're not a real gamer yet, but it was that, like, remake of the original Pokemon for the Switch, and it was, like, supposed to be super simplified. You play it with one controller, so you could play it with a friend, and blah blah blah. It sounds like the sort of thing that, like, targets literally the exact demographic that we are, like, 90s boys who grew up and now are dating 90s girls, and, like, you show it to your girlfriend, and, like, because it's literally like the second player is like the opposite sex, because you get to choose the gender of the character at the beginning of the game, and it's like you don't get to customize your character. It's like if you chose boy, now the partner is girl, and like that's fucking it. Like it's very clear this is exactly who they're trying to target. Yeah, and it's just a terrible time for you. So like how did it work for you? Do you want to explain a little bit?
Yeah, it was just the worst. So you join as like player 1 and you start the game, and then to join you I have to shake the controller, and my player just like pops out of the sky and
just like drops from heaven, like fucking
falls down, and then that's fun, so that if at any point I shake the controller too much,
you can just leave.
I disappear.
So if you're like talking with your hands, because you're Italian and I'm Italian and we talk with our hands, you'll just like whoop, fucking disappear.
It's happened so often that I'm just like, I do something too passionately and I disappear into the
sky.
But
it's not even just that, like so that happens, but also at any point when there's like a story important, like a critical moment in the game's plot, she'll just like fucking go, she'll just disappear. And like what qualifies as like a story important thing goes from like talking to certain characters to like taking opening an elevator, or like
entering any room,
you just like disappear, I walk through, and then you come back.
It's
and
ridiculous.
It's like, it's fucking ridiculous. Like, and the reason I say it's like the antithesis to this is that like it's such a stupid gamey thing to do that. And like if you imagine like if it wasn't you who knows like a little bit about games, if you were introducing anyone else to games through this, they'd be like, what the fuck is this garbage? Like these games like are so in the past, they can't even figure out how two people can play Pokemon together, you know? There's also just like a lot of like really shitty mechanics that just like completely break down as soon as you add a second player. Like so one of the big draws to this game is that every single Pokemon is modeled and animated, and you can take each and every single one out of the Pokeball and walk around with them.
Yeah, and I was so excited because some of the Pokemon you can ride them.
Yes.
Well, like, like the Charizard, like you can get on his back and ride him around.
I can ride them, but you can't.
Well, that's the thing, is that we took out the Pokemon. Let's say we took out Charizard for me, and he just wasn't there.
Yeah. So the way it works is like, so some Pokemon, when they come out of the Pokeball, they follow you behind and it's fine. But some, your character like gets on, and then it either makes you faster or it makes you taller or some fucking bullshit. But the second player, for literally no reason, can't do this.
Yeah.
And so like our team by the end of the game just happened to be all Pokemon that could be ridden except for Venusaur.
Yeah.
So basically we got to a point where like it was always fun to like, oh, who do you want to have out? Oh, I want to have this guy, I want to have this guy. To like once they all evolved, it was like I had to ride a Pokemon and she could only have Venusaur, which meant you had to like fuck around with like the position of your party members so that you could actually even do that, because like the two Pokemon you take out have to be next to each other, which then fucked up for battles. But anyways, so you always had Venusaur at the end, and I always had to ride something, except all of the guys that I could ride were like super fast.
Yeah, and then I was just trailing behind and I would get lost.
So I had to like jitter in my movement just so that you weren't like in another fucking country.
Yeah, and then what would end up happening is you would fly so far forward and I'd be off screen, and then I wouldn't know what to do, and so I'd shake the controller to zoop into the sky, then shake it again to come back where I was. Yeah, so it kind of defeats the whole purpose of like, oh, you're going on this Pokemon adventure together, because like you're not. The fact that you cannot, I don't know, both ride the same Pokemon or both ride separate Pokemon, like I can't think of a single legitimate reason why you wouldn't want that to be the case. I don't know why they did that this way.
I mean, there's also the matter of like the gameplay itself. Even though like yes, you literally like sometimes you can get the two players to play together, and you can technically go through a lot of the game together. It breaks the two basic like pieces of gameplay in this, which are catching Pokemon and having Pokemon fights. Yeah. Because so in Pokemon battles,
we just kicked ass all the time.
Well, see, because what I assumed it would do is because you're two people, you have two Pokemon out. I assumed every enemy would then throw two Pokemon out at a time.
Yeah, no.
But it doesn't do that. No. So every single fight becomes a 2-on-1 fight. So you have two and they have one, and you just decimate everybody.
But it gets boring.
Yeah.
Like, there's no challenge.
Yeah, because most enemies get killed in the first turn, and then you're like, okay, well, thanks. I think it must have been like hours, maybe even days of playing this game before anyone managed to attack us. Because we just kept wiping them out in the first turn. Yeah. In catching, it's not so bad. I mean,
it's goofy.
It's goofy. I mean, but the only benefit is that you have the two Pokeballs, and if you throw them at the same time, you have a better chance, which again kind of breaks the game. It gives you like a totally unfair advantage over someone who's like playing alone, I guess. Yeah. But I think the worst offender in terms of just like bullshit in this game that makes no sense when you're playing multiplayer is, you know what I'm gonna say?
The water?
Yes, the fucking water.
Yeah, the water's some bullshit.
The way water works in Pokemon, I mean, I don't know do I have to fucking explain how water works? Anyways, there's points in the game where not to you, I mean to the people listening. I assume most people know what the fuck Pokemon is, but there are points in the game where you have to traverse large bodies of water. And to do that, you use a special move, and then you ride your Pokemon on the water, or whatever the fuck, and then sometimes there's battles that happen in the water, there's Pokemon, there's trainers, whatever. But again, for literally no reason. So the way it works, you don't ride a Pokemon in this, but like Pikachu has a surfboard, and you ride, it's fucking whatever. But as soon as player 1 gets on the surfboard, player 2 disappears. It's as if you're in a story important segment. And I assumed that like player 2 would come back when it was time for a battle, and we'd still be able to do our double team fucking kick everybody's ass thing. But player 2 doesn't show up, so this game, which markets itself as, oh, it's super simple, you can just pick up the second Joy-Con and play together. Yeah, except you can't when you're on the water. The whole water segment is single player only for no fucking reason.
Yeah, there's no reason for this at all.
That's what I meant by like you get angry, because like
I hate this game so much.
Well, when we started playing it, it was before we did Resident Evil and all that shit. So like you hadn't really played a lot of like very good co-op games.
Yeah.
And so every time something like this happened, I can only assume, like, to you, it was like, there's no reason this should be like that.
Having to go back and record the footage, that we're going to use in the video.
Oh, fuck.
I got so upset because now I'm going back to it having played other good co-op games. And so it's just, I was so upset. Like, I kept asking you, like, do we have enough footage? Like, are we done?
Yeah, you just wanted to stop right away.
I'm not actually playing the game. I'm just following you across rooms until you hit a threshold, and then I disappear, and then I come back. Yeah. It's not fun at all.
The only agency you have is in the battles, and even at that point,
the battles are so unbalanced that it's not fun at all.
So and I mean, often you're just asking me like, okay, what move should I do? And like we're just it's not even like
not even a game anymore.
Yeah, it's not like we're fighting against each other. We're not like fighting two different we're fighting one guy together, and half the time we're killing him in the first round, and it's just no fun. So anyways, I just thought that would be a really funny thing to point out at the end of this is here are all these different games that we went through, and we were able to go through Resident Evil, this like very daunting and challenging, and like it kind of fucking casts a big shadow, and it's a little bit scary to go into that if you're a first time player, which you went through. And then something that's like child friendly like fucking Pokemon ended up being a total shit show.
Absolutely.
I don't know, I thought that would be fun to end this video on.
Yeah, and I couldn't imagine doing this video and not talking about it, because I do have very strong feelings about this game. So
this is like the first game that you have criticized.
Oh yeah.
Like this is like the game that turned you into a game critic.
Well,
this is like your SpongeBob Revenge of the Flying Dutchman.
Stop.
Yes. Okay, that's it. Do you want to leave now? I'm going to do the Patreon readout.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Do you want to hear the names of all the people who have been giving me money? No,
sure,
you don't.
go ahead.
No, you can leave if you want.
Bye-bye.
Okay, you have better things to do.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Okay, goodbye. Yeah, and that was that. So, this is a very unorthodox video. It's not the sort of shit I've ever done, but please let me know if it's the sort of shit that you'd like to see more often. I mean, honestly, it was an idea that first came to me when we played God of War, and we had a very different experience with it, and I thought it would be really, really cool to talk about that. But then as we played more games, I realized it kind of snowballed into this bigger topic, and as I saw more channels covering the same thing, I was like, wow, this is a thing that a lot of people of our generation who have grown up to this point in our lives are all experiencing at the same time, but separately. And I thought I think it's really cool to kind of like, be another voice in this crowd saying, hey, me too, So yeah, without further ado, those of you who have pledged to give me money on Patreon are the following. And just before I do that, I at the time of recording this, I just sent out a heads up to you guys that I have a video coming out this week, and that you will get charged for it. And the last thing I want to do right now is sap any money from anybody who needs it for anything else that's going on in their lives right now. So I know I already sent the warning out, but I won't be charging this video at the time it uploads like I typically do. I'll charge it like a day or two later. I think I can schedule the post. So even if you see this video and you're watching it right now, just know that you won't be charged right away. So if you're interested in canceling or postponing or whatever the hell you want to do to your patronage, feel free to do it. I know that personally I haven't been impacted too harshly, but I know that things like subscription services like Patreon and Humble Bundle and all sorts of other bullshit like that, those are the things that I'm targeting first if things get too tight for me. So I figured this is the sort of warning I'd want if I were about to get charged for something that I feel like is not a necessity in my life right now. So I figured I'd extend that warning to you guys, so feel free, no hard feelings. I've already read your names, so you got nothing to lose. Basically is the way I'm putting it. But without further ado, you guys are Adustus, Cosmic Crown, Disgruntled Mushroom, Final Blue Man, Glenn Strawn, Grant Whalen, oh baby yeah, Isaac Holland, Josh Ferguson, Just Wally, Kiwi, Matthew Stephen, Nathan Walker, Tito's, Vinjock, and William Van Zant. And with that being said, this has been another video from Regional Doofus Head over here, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you give a shit about it, and let me know what you think in the comments, and whatever the fuck else you can do. If you enjoy, put a thumb on my thing, whatever the hell that means. And that's it, you know, keep things good, wash your hands, wash your bum, and most importantly, take it easy!